Hi, it's Tracey Campbell here. It's my very first share for Confessions of a Paper Addict DesignTeam, and I'm very excited to be here. Today I'm going to take you through a process video of how I used two of the different cut files from the Etsy shop. And I started out by creating the background. I've used a few different colour watercolours that I've got to simply create two different areas on the 12 by 12 cardstock where I'm going to simply place the cut file. I drew my inspiration from my actual tattoos on my wrists. They're what they call watercolour tattoos, and it's just an image with a watercolour backing. So I've got that as my inspiration, and I'm thinking of that and the cut file as I'm painting. So I use a bit of watercolour that I've activated with water, and I also sprayed the 12 by 12 cardstock with a bit of water, and as I'm putting colour down I'm spraying it a little bit more, making the paper quite wet, but it's also making the paint, the water paint, spread and bleed everywhere, which was the look I was going for, a really messy water-based colour look. Roughly in the same shape as the cutout of the die cut, and I'm just adding all sorts of colours to it, a little bit at a time, kind of in the same sequence. So where I've just put green is where some of the leaves will be, a rough area anyway. And I'm starting up in the top right corner. I am using two different die cut files. The first one that you saw me using down in the bottom left was FlowerPot, and the one I'm using and holding up at the moment is called Dahlia Cluster. They're lovely flower inspired die cuts or cut files, and they're very detailed, so when you do cut them, there's a lot of little cutouts that come out, but they're well designed that they actually all pop out. I didn't have any difficulties with any of the having to weed out any of the excess paper cardstock from the cut file. So I'm just having a play, dabbing, putting some paint down, dabbing up some of the excess if there's too much water and colour down. So I just want it as a subtle touch, a subtle look. So just creating a background. And it's just a matter of playing and experimenting with colours. The flower pot has actually got a little three little cluster of hearts sitting in the middle of the flower pot, so that's why I put that little bit of pink there. And now I'm just giving some extra messiness to the page by putting some water splats and colour splats all over the page, simply by adding excess water to my water paint and dabbing my brush in and flicking it around the page. Now I have gone with a little bit of gold touch. So this little cube I'm using, it's a colour shimmer pot from Colour Blast. Then, however, no longer in production, but it's just a really shimmery water-based paper, water-based watercolour, which gives a gold shimmer effect. It's a lot like the Heidi Shine mist that she has. So you can actually use some of that if you want to, instead of using the watercolours like I have. I just trimmed off roughly about 1 centimetre off my paper that I did the watercolour on. Now I will tell you, I actually didn't use cardstock for the paper. It's actually a watercolour or water paint paper, and it was 30 centimetres by 30 centimetres, so it's a little bit under the true 12 by 12 size, so I just cut off about another centimetre off the side. And then I cut the middle out of a 12 by 12 piece of paper, because I will use the centre of that paper for another layout at another time. I've just got a paper punch, edger, and I've just taken off a couple of the little side bits on my background. It's just give a little bit of texture and a little bit of movement to the page. Just using some double-sided sticky tape to adhere to the cutout paper. So I'm putting a colourful background or a colour background on to the paper. Just turning the corners down because the effect from the water that I've added to the paper has warped my page a bit, so I'm just bending it back the opposite way. Now this is what I'm looking for, is the die cuts over the colours. However, when I put the white die cut down on the colour, it didn't stand out enough, so I decided that I wanted to give it a little bit of colour. So I've grabbed some Colour Blast shimmer spray in Stormy Weather, it's called, this colour, and I've just gone over and sprayed the die cut. Now, didn't get the colour all over it while I was spraying, so instead of wasting more spray, I'm just picking up the excess spray from the backing mat and am painting over where the spray didn't go. Just popping those to the side for a little bit to dry up. And now I'm going to colour up the little hearts that I was telling you about from in the centre of the flower pot. I've just sprayed them with bubblegum colour spray. Now, right, I'm going to use the centre of what I cut out from the 12 by 12 paper and another bit of scrap paper, so some bright pink, to mat my photo. Now, I didn't want it to be perfect, given that I've got an imperfect background with the water bleeding colours all over the place. So I've just lightly cut it out, and a couple of mils around the edge of the photos, and then I'm going to back it again onto the Word paper and do the same. Right. I'm just checking to see if my cut files are dry, and they are touch dry. They're still a little bit soft, but I'm going to have a play and put them down into position. Now you can see that the contrast between the Stormy Weather and the bubblegum makes the image stand out on the background water from the background watercolours. Now I'm just getting off some thread here. I'm going to use that as a little bit more texture, and I'm going to position the thread in 3 different areas where I'm going to put some embellishment clusters on the page. And it was just a matter of making 3 piles, having it kind of loop around each other, and then position them where I wanted to. And that just adds a little texture to the page. It's a little bit of fun, a little bit different, something to draw the eye around the page. Now I am trying to work out where I wanted to put the 3rd cluster, and end up putting it down in the bottom left hand corner. Now I don't tend to stick the thread down, because by the time you put the embellishments over the top and your photo, all the adhesive on that will anchor the thread to the page. I'm using a 3-dimensional liquid as my adhesive. I find that the 3-dimensional liquid works really well as a glue for die cuts. It flows on nicely, it dries clear, and it also gives you a little bit of time before it sets that you can lift up the edges and tuck things under, or reposition if you have to. Like me, if you're like me, I'm a bit of a messy scrapbooker, so I tend to try and clean up as I'm going. So I've always got a baby wipe on hand to wipe away any excess. And just pressing it down once again, the Delia cluster in the top right corner, just making sure I did get some glue on it all. And popping in the 3 funky little hearts. I just love the die cut of the flower pot. It's so sweet. I can imagine a layout that I want to do with this is Bronte had a tea party when she was about 2 in the backyard, and I've got photos. I just have to find the photos, and I'm going to use the FlowerPot again to create a layout with that. Right, onto my clusters. Decide that I haven't got enough flowers on the page. So I'll get some die cuts, flowers, and I'm just working out how I'm going to position them without taking away the focus from the photo and the cut files. And just a few little clusters around the place. I've used some flares as well that I've had lying around. And I'm happy with the positioning of it all, so I'm just going to trim off a bit of the flower to tuck under and stick them down. Once again using the 3-dimensional liquid as my adhesive. Now with some of the flares, if they've got a solid metal backing, I tend to put a little bit of double-sided sticky tape and then some of the adhesive glue. This just gives it a double chance to stick, because sometimes the glue will dry and being metal on the glue, it falls off. Just having a bit of a play and making sure that I'm happy with where everything is going. Decide that I needed to put a title on it. Now I was looking at these die cut titles at first, but the darkness of the colour was just too dark for the layout and didn't suit, so I've decided to go with some white foam stickers instead, and just a simple title called Smiles. I love this photo of the girls. It's not very often I get a photo with them being loving to each other and both having a smile on their face at the same time. I've usually got one sticking their tongue out, one screwing their face up, frowny eyes, or it just takes so long to get a good photo. I just give up in the end sometimes and just think that's life. Just popping up a little bit of a label. It reads, "Just being around you makes me smile." And finishing off with a few different elements for the clusters. So I'm just adding 3 little birds, and they just seemed perfect to add to the layout. Just the right colours and right size. And finishing off with some little tiny heart embellishments in the dark blue. So introduce dark blue now because one of the birds had a bit of dark blue in it, and there was also dark blue in the water paint background that I did, but nowhere else on the page. So I just wanted to tie it all in together. And right about now I'm thinking I'd finished. And yep, I have, and I'm just giving you a bit of a show of what it looked like, and I hope you enjoyed this process video. I would love for you to pop on to the Etsy shop and have a look at the latest cut files there, and you can find the shop at the address that's going to pop up in a couple of seconds. And thanks for sticking with me, and come in and see us on Facebook at Confessions of a Paper Addict.